the Chiefs also added safety Mike Edwards, formerly of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That is a world champion in and of himself. Don't want to talk about the reason why he's a Super Bowl champion, though, personally. But Mike Edwards, thoughts on him, Matthew?
Oh man, playmaker. He's just a guy. I have not seen a player just be around a football quite as much as Mike Edwards has been in the NFL. And we're talking like undercutting routes. We're talking getting over the top of stuff. Or he's that guy that every time there's a tip pass, he somehow is always the guy like right behind it. And the crazy thing is once it happens, he's a threat to take almost all of these to back for a touchdown. Like he's got what I think 4 pick sixes in the NFL so far over 4 seasons. He had 2 in one game at one point in time. Like it's crazy how many interceptions he finds himself in. A lot of it is his ability to read and diagnose the field, but a lot of it is just kind of having that natural feel for reading out the field. You're dropping into coverage. You see it one route coming this way, another this way, and you're watching the quarterback's eyes. He just seems to process all of that at the same time and always at least get himself towards the football. I think there are some athletic limitations, and I think that's probably why he's been at his best when he's allowed to be a third safety. When his snaps in a game or in a season are limited to certain situations to where there's going to be 6, 7 defensive backs on the field. His specific role is going to be a little bit more narrow than everything that's all encompassed in a full-time starter. So this past season for the Bucs, he took over as a full-time starter, and he had a few more struggles than he had through his first 3 seasons in the league. But if you go back and watch anything from 2019 to 2021, yeah, there were some injuries in there, but when he played, free safety in the box, in the slot, and this is just a guy that is very good in coverage, solid run defender when he has to come up and make plays, and just always around the football. I think that's something the Chiefs kind of want. Like you look at Juan Thornhill as a rookie, all these plays on the ball, a lot of these big highlight taking the ball away kind of plays. And then they, as his career went through the injury, he tried to get to recover, and it kind of took some time to get back there to where he was making some plays on the football again. Justin Reed, never been the highest in terms of production of making plays in the football. I don't know if Brian Cook is going to be that type of guy. Well, now you have a safety that can make plays. Now you have a safety that quarterbacks have to be a little afraid putting the ball near him because of what he can do. I think that kind of goes a long way to the mentality of the offense that you're facing.
Absolutely. Somebody asked earlier, it's just up above here, asking about the linebacker Drew Tranquill playing the sort of Dan Sorensen role. Guess what? That role is Mike Edwards. It's absolutely Mike Edwards. Of course, it was Grayson. Grayson is awesome. But Grayson asked that earlier. That is Mike Edwards, this ball hawk guy that's going to be a little bit rangy on the back end. He is very physical, a former cornerback, got into some trouble, ended up at Coffeyville Community College for a little while, got kind of kicked off of that, ended up at Hawaii after he transferred there, and then transferred to Kentucky for his last year, played corner throughout all of those stops. Bucs draft him in 2013 and convert him to safety. He has been pretty good there in spot starter roles. It's fun to watch a guy like that is just going to fly around, that is going to hit guys, and is going to be constantly around the ball. And it's also a guy that you can put in some man coverage. You can kick him down to the slot. He is comfortable doing those things, playing physical in the slot against a tight end, against a bigger slot receiver as well. You can trust him to carry those guys a little bit. That gives you the amoebic nature of the secondary that you're looking for out of those 3 safeties. Justin Reed, Brian Cook, and Mike Edwards can be interchangeable in their roles. Yes, there are going to be times where you're going to want a guy on another guy because it's not going to be a straight 1-for-1 swap, but you're going to be able to trot those 3 guys out there and not reveal what your safeties are going to be doing at any given time. I love Juan Thornhill. I'm happy Juan Thornhill got signed to an extra contract here. There was never really a time that you were going to see Juan Thornhill standing in the box and you were going to go, oh, I bet he's going to stay here and fit the run. That wasn't his forte. That wasn't the best place to use him. You can put Mike Edwards there. You can put Brian Cook there. You can put Justin Reed there. Spags will do that. And so that's going to create a multitude of different looks with 3 different guys that can all kind of play similarly. And this guy is a guy that can turn over the ball as well. Again, like I mentioned earlier, this is for the dime. You are improving the dime defense. He is an excellent fit as that third safety that's coming on the field.
I think the competition factor for a young safety like Brian Cook is pretty valuable too. And I think the same thing you can say actually applies, to the linebacker room as well. You want to continue to keep these guys pushing. You want to, try to get the most out of these guys that are on their second year in the NFL. But this gives you some, valuable rotational depth. It gives you some veteran experience in case some of these guys do hit a sophomore slump. I think Mike Edwards could compete for a safety spot. I think he can compete with Brian Cook for a starting role. Whether or not he ultimately does get it doesn't matter in some ways, because I think it's just good to have the kind of safety depth that this team has got to this point. This is a good trio. I think Mike Edwards' ball production speaks for itself, and it's a guy I think makes a lot of sense for a young secondary still that didn't have a ton of ball production across the board. I mean, this wasn't an elite, turnover machine in the back seven necessarily. They did fine, but they were not necessarily, an overly dynamic group when it came to taking the ball away. So put some pressure on defense and put some pressure on opposing offenses with what, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense can do. And you got another guy that can get his hands on the football. I love the idea of that. So I think it just makes a lot of sense in a lot of different ways. I'm not going to say I'm surprised that the Chiefs did it. I look at this draft class and I'm not overly excited about any of these safeties stepping in from day one. There's not a ton of them that I'm just geeked out about.
Brian Branch.
Brian,
round one pick, Brian Branch. Yes.
So yeah, it's like, I don't think the Chiefs are going to be picking. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be taking a safety early. I think they might have other issues to address on this football team besides that, which we might have to get here in a second. But I think jumping out here and addressing linebacker, addressing safety in free agency, when you look at the totality of the roster building, we tend to focus and spend so much time on edge, receiver, tackle, that you forget that there are other needs on this football team, and there are other ways when they're self-scouting that they can get better. And they kind of agree with what a lot of us said. The dime needs to improve. And guess what they did? They went out and drastically improved the dime and added, some veteran depth from a not 50,000. Let's get down to 30,000. It made a lot of sense, both of these moves, Matthew.
Yeah, well, and the best part about, I guess, like both moves are going to impact the dime defense. I already talked a little bit how I think Tranquil will probably be the base and maybe even the nickel. Like, I could see Drew Tranquil actually having a lot of snaps. I think Mike Edwards is probably going to settle in as the third safety. I think Brian Cook was getting better and better throughout the season. He's going to have an extra year in the system. Edwards has struggled with health a little bit in the NFL, and I think his worst season overall came when he was seeing the most reps, right? So I think you like him in this reserve role, this third safety role, but this is where it's good. Instead of getting just a deep safety, so Mike Edwards always has to play deep, or just a Dan Sorensen, what people thought of Dan Sorensen, where he has to play in the box. So, instead of getting one specific guy, Mike Edwards has played over his career over 500 snaps in the box, over 1,300 snaps at free safety, over 400 snaps in the slot, right? Like, he's played everywhere that you're going to ask a safety to play. So when he comes on the field, you don't know if he's going to be sliding into the slot or if he's going to be sitting out deep or in the box. And that also allows you to move Justin Reed around a little bit, move Brian Cook around a little bit. Like, nobody's going to be in a stagnant position. I think a little issue the Chiefs ran into with Thornhill, he had to play deep. The man coverage skills weren't quite there, despite the fact that he played corner a little bit in college. So the man coverage skills weren't quite there. He wasn't a good enough tackler, physical enough to play inside the box. He had to be your deep safety, and it made it, I don't want to say it limited the Chiefs, but you couldn't move everybody around the same way that you maybe could have when there was a Tyrann Mathieu with rookie Juan Thornhill before pre-injury and Dan Sorensen. So now you bring in three guys. All three of these safeties can play anywhere. That's what Steve Spagnuolo wants. When those guys are out there, you don't know who's going to be where, and that's what he wants. So I think that signing in particular, just from the versatility standpoint, is exactly what they were looking for in that position.
Now you look at your cornerback room that has L'Jarius Sneed that can play inside, Trent McDuffie that can play inside, and then you got another corner that you're going to rely on to play outside. That's fine. You look at your defensive line where you've got Charles Omenihu, Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, Tershawn Wharton. All of those guys can play any position on the front floor in the dime. And now you've got a linebacker on top of these safeties that we're talking about that has played safety before, is comfortable running the pole, especially in a Tampa 2 alignment, and can actually carry a third receiver up the seam there. There is a play, if you check out the KCSN Substack tomorrow morning, or if you're listening to this later, go check it out right now. There is a play where he's going to check Tyreek Hill, drop into a roll to undercut him and almost get an interception. He did that again a little bit in the year last year, where he was able to drop and bait Derek Carr to try and throw a pass over his head, and he was able to gain enough depth to come up with the interception. He just has that vertical element as a linebacker to help your safeties even more. Now all of a sudden you've got a dime group that you can do a whole bunch of crazy stuff with. You can move guys around everywhere, and boy, talk about Steve Spagnuolo and what he wants to do, especially in those 3rd and long scenarios, especially in the dime. He wants to get crazy with his personnel and crazy with his alignments. He kind of introduced that 2 robber look where he's rotating out of the slot there a couple of years ago, and now the entire NFL is doing it. I am very excited to see what he's cooking up, because these 2 moves feel absolutely predicated on his scheme and the exotic nature of it coming to play on Sundays next year.
Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. Check out these videos that feature our team of more than 15 former players, insiders, and analysts, bringing you the best Chiefs coverage you can find. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.